Today is October 10th, World Mental Health Day, but mental health is a conversation that we need to be having every single day. That is why Genghis Capital has partnered with Chiromo Hospital to bring this special segment for you. My name is Damaris Mukulu, the Head of Brand Marketing and Communications, and today I'll be having a conversation with Dr. Rose Ngindi of Chiromo Hospital. Dr. Rose Ngindi is a clinical psychologist with more than 10 years' experience in the field of clinical and counseling psychology. She's currently the head of training programs and research at the Chiromo Hospital Group. She's passionate about training, research, and has special interest in mental health among the youth. We are honored to have her join us today for our discussion. Welcome everyone to the Genghis channel. We're glad you could tune in today. We are honored to have Dr. Rose Ngindi of Chiromo Hospital join us today to talk about all things mental health. Karibu Daktari.
Thank you so much, Damaris. Indeed, it's an honor for me to be here and talk matters mental health.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I think let's kick it off with basics. What is mental health?
What is mental health? A good question indeed, because most people don't know what is mental health. Now, mental health basically is a state of well-being in which an individual is able to realize his or her potential. A state of well-being where the individual is able to cope with the normal stresses of life. Let me emphasize on the word normal stresses of life, because at times we have abnormal stresses. Then number 3, the individual is able to work productively as well as fruitful. And the last parameter that makes us know more about our mental health is our ability to actually make a contribution in the society. So basically, mental health is a state of well-being where you and I, we are living up to our potential. We are actually able to cope with the normal stresses of life. You are able to work productively and also fruitfully. And you're able to make a contribution in the society. Society could be your family, it could be your organization, or any other setting where people are expecting you to make a contribution. And also let me say something else, Damaris, that one of the key components of an individual's mental health is the capacity to effectively perform your roles, be it as a parent, be it as an employee somewhere, or whichever role that you are given. How effective you do that is a major indicator of your mental health.
Thank you so much for that very wholesome definition of mental health. It's something that I think a lot of us are not aware of, and it's actually good to get that kind of information. Why is it important for us to be having this kind of conversations around well-being and mental health?
Good. Let me ask a question now, Damaris. Damaris again. If I told you I'm having an appointment with a psychiatrist, what would go through your mind?
Well, old Damaris would probably be wondering what's wrong with Rose and be a bit concerned and maybe think you should be dealing with it privately. But new Damaris would actually think that's progressive, something to be encouraged.
Good. So why do we need to talk matters mental health? Number 1, because of the stigma that surrounds matters mental health. We need to get to a point where we debunk the myths that people have on matters mental health. More often than not, you say that you have a mental disorder. Unfortunately, in our society, someone would think, they will think that you are mad.
True.
You see? And basically, mental health or someone who has a mental disorder does not mean they are mad. They are going through a situation that has incapacitated them. Now, number 1 is to debunk the myths that people have on matters mental health. So to actually fight stigma. And stigma can either be social or it can be self-stigma. But did you know something? Self-stigma is worse than social stigma, because I carry myself wherever I go. So even if people accept me with my conditions, I might not have accepted myself with what I am going through. So that is number 1. The number 2, why do we need to talk on matters mental health? It's because we are living in very challenging times in this life. Because there is a relationship between stress and mental health, or what we call mental disorders. You'll agree with me, currently we are having matters inflation.
True.
Money matters. You're supposed to pay school fees. You're supposed to pay rent. But when you look at what you have and what you're supposed to pay for, the expenditure and the income, there's a very big difference. And what does that do? It creates anxiety. Now, how you cope with that anxiety is very, very important. And one of the risk factors to mental health or mental disorders, it is actually matters to do with stress. So matters mental health, once we need to discuss some of these what we call psychosocial stresses. You know, our day-to-day lives, some of the issues, some of the events, some of the experiences we go through and how we handle them can put us at a risk of developing a mental disorder. That's why we need to speak, to start this conversation on matters mental health so that each and every person has a forum, has an avenue of addressing what is actually affecting them. Because if you don't address or talk about what you are going through and you manage the stress that comes from our day-to-day lives, if we manage that stress in a negative way, then that puts us at a risk of developing a mental disorder, and that actually now borders on matters mental health. So we need to fight stigma and we need to get outlets where we actually get better coping skills to the psychosocial stressors.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. I think the next question I would like to ask is, what is the impact of neglecting your mental health or well-being?
Okay. Now, having looked at the different dimensions that actually define our mental health, I must say that when we neglect our mental health, we put ourselves at a risk of developing chronic stress, burnouts, and mental disorders. We put ourselves at a risk. Now, when I'm talking of chronic stress, it's important for me to mention that stress, we have some positive stress in life and we have some negative stress. Now, on matters mental health, our concern is the negative stress, which we call distress. Because our day-to-day lives, our experiences and our interpersonal relationships, we are bound to experience some challenges. And how we cope with these challenges is very, very important. So if someone faces these challenges in a negative way, how? Could be I am having a very difficult time in the office and I don't know how to cope with it, but I say let me go drink at least to relieve myself of the anxiety. You see, so what is pushing this person to go drink only one bottle? It's because they are facing some stresses. So how you cope with that stress, and more so the chronic stress, the stress that wears you day in, day out, can actually put you at a risk of developing a mental disorder. Number two, if you don't cope with stress well, in the positive way, you are at a risk of developing something called burnout. There's a difference between stress and burnout. Only that now in this case, burnout is more of an occupational phenomena. Burnout happens mostly because of my work environment. The overload, the long working hours, interpersonal conflicts, such within the work environment, that is what causes us burnout. And many people are experiencing burnout, but they are not aware. They think they're just tired. I am not just in the mood of going to work today. And let me now mention the three areas that are actually the three components of burnout. One of them is called emotional exhaustion. You just wake up and you are just exhausted. You are fatigued. You don't feel like going to work. In fact, you enjoyed going to work. Oh, it's a Monday morning. You're already feeling emotional. You can't imagine riding or driving to work. You're emotionally exhausted. The number two component of exhaustion is what we call depersonalization. Whereby you lose empathy. You're not empathetic. Nothing surprises you. Even when something catastrophic happens, it's okay. It's like you become the human. Nothing surprises you. We call it depersonalization. Even when you hear someone has passed on, okay, you lack empathy. People around you will be wondering, why are you responding like that? For you, it's very normal. Then the third component of burnout is actually what we call reduced sense of achievement. You look at yourself, Damaris, and you are wondering, have I achieved anything in this life? Even if I work, to what value? You look at yourself and you are wondering, am I of any value? So burnout, that is emotional exhaustion. We are talking about depersonalization, and we are talking about reduced feelings of achievement. Now, most people are not aware that they're experiencing burnout. They are feeling they are sick, completely sick, and they go to the hospital. And at times the doctor will do all the tests, and they will tell you, will give you a clean bill of health, you're okay. Then they ask you, you can take an off and relax. And there you go. Before you realize it, you are rejuvenated again. So it is mostly an occupational phenomena. It is not about other stressors. Then now let's talk about what concerns us more on mental health, mental disorders. Stress does not cause mental disorders. No. How you cope with stress is what puts you at a risk of developing mental disorders. What happens? When you get stressed, your brain responds, and it produces what we call stress hormones. Now, stress hormones, they affect part of your brain that is responsible for emotional regulation and is responsible for your memory. Did you know when people are stressed, emotions run high?
Yes.
In an office, emotions will run high. A very small thing and people will erupt.
Sure.
Do you know when you are stressed at times, you move from one office, you go to the other office and you forget what you are going to pick?
Totally.
Yes, it's because of the stress hormones in our bodies. But also let me mention something. When it comes to mental disorders, now, what is a mental disorder? Because that's the gist of actually mental health. Now, mental disorder refers to a range of conditions that affect the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we behave. We've talked about stress, we talked about burnout, and I brought out the 3 components of burnout, the 3 areas of concern when it comes to burnout. Now, with mental disorders, it's actually the greatest challenge on matters mental health, because mental disorder basically refers to a range of conditions that affect the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you behave. So if a psychiatrist or a psychologist diagnoses someone with a mental disorder, it means their thoughts, their feelings, and their behavior has changed. It is not within what we'll call the normal thought process of feeling or even behavior. And we have a range of mental disorders. There are so many, but what is more prevalent currently is actually depression. Depression is prevalent because, as you know, with COVID came with a lot of uncertainties. And uncertainties create anxiety. And how you cope with anxiety is very, very important, because if you don't cope with anxiety in a healthy way, then you put yourself at a risk. Then more often than not, people are concerned of mental disorders. But let me say, our concern should also be mental health problems. I might not have depression, I might not have schizophrenia, but I have a mental health problem. And someone will be wondering, what's the difference between a mental disorder and a mental health problem? Yes. Now, mental health problem basically describes symptoms that are associated with a mental disorder, but the severity of the symptoms does not qualify them to be termed as a mental disorder. An example, stress, burnout, they are mental health problems. One of the symptoms when someone is stressed, you are fatigued, your sleep is disturbed, your appetite is affected, your memory is affected. But did you know the same symptoms? They are also in depression. Only that now those symptoms under stress, they are not so severe as they are in depression. So we need to also to take care of ourselves so that we don't develop what we call mental health problems. The fact that I don't have depression, it doesn't mean I'm mentally healthy. If I am actually having stress that is affecting my appetite, then I am not mentally healthy, because stress will affect my day-to-day living. You get the picture? So that is the reason why. That is the impact of us not taking care of our mental health. Yes.
Wow. Thank you. Like, that is very insightful and has all of us thinking. Now that we know you can have a mental health problem even before you have a disorder.
Yes.
What are some of these resources that are available to us that can allow us to be proactive instead of being reactive?
Excellent. One of the resources that we have is self-care. And let me also mention this. It's important for everybody to know that we are all candidates of developing a mental disorder or developing a mental health problem. Why? Some of these conditions are genetic. Number two, some of them are caused by the environment. We all live in an environment where we actually get stressed out, right? So it's important for us, resource number one is for us to know that we are all candidates of developing a mental disorder or a mental health problem.
And it's not a bad thing.
And it's not a bad thing. That awareness is very, very important. Number two, are we able to access resources? For instance, let me now talk about employers. What are the available resources that employers can actually avail to the employees? One of them is seeking to partner with mental health practitioners to psychoeducate employees on matters mental health, like what we are doing right now. Because somebody will get to understand more about mental health. They will understand whether they are at risk. It will make them realize so and so is behaving like this because of this person could be having a mental disorder. More so, let me also talk about very available resources from Chiromo Hospital Group. Chiromo Hospital Group has what we call digitalized self-screening tools.
Wow.
Digitalized mental health self-screening tools. It's just a link.
Wow.
So once you receive it, you fill in. It's a tool. And these tools are not for Chiromo. They are standardized tools. Tools that are also used in America. Now, which tools do we have for us? We have one tool for depression. We have a tool of anxiety, for anxiety. We have a very exciting tool for burnout.
I like what you said, exciting.
Yes, it's quite exciting because you only need a link. You only need your phone, you only need a laptop. On your way home, go ahead, fill it up. And then it will give you the scores and it will give you the interpretation. So if you're wondering, am I having burnout? It will actually give you the results. If you want to know whether you are depressed, it will tell you if you are depressed or not, but also it will give you the severity. So that even as I sit and I'm like, I'm not understanding myself, this tool, once you engage with the tool, it will give you a clear indicator about your status on matters mental health. To do with the burnout, are you having a burnout? It will tell you. Because it will give you the results and the interpretations. And it will recommend whether you need to see a psychologist or whether you want to see a psychiatrist. So basically, those are some of the resources I will talk about, but much of it is creating awareness on matters mental health. Yes.
Thank you so much, Daktari. I think we're going to include a link to some of those tools in our descriptions on our different platforms just for the different audiences to use. But like you said, that's very exciting.
Yes.
I think probably as we wind up, I would like to just ask, what's the one thing that each of us can leave after watching this particular video? What's the one thing we can do today to start looking after our own mental health?
Self-care.
Self-care. Say no more. I think self-care is a buzzword that we all like.
Yes, and this self-care should be intentional.
Intentional.
One needs to sit down and realize, I need to take care of me. Because if I don't take care of me, anything associated with me will suffer. My productivity will suffer. My social relationships will suffer. And someone might be asking, what is self-care? Self-care is any strategy, is any activity, any engagement you actually undertake, just to make sure that you are healthy mentally. And when you talk about self-care, there are 6 dimensions of self-care that we all need to engage in, and we ought to be intentional. Number 1, physical self-care. It's important for us to take care of ourselves. It's good to do some bit of exercise. It's good even to do something that excites you as a person. Do you know it's good to have enough sleep?
Rumor has it.
Yes. Do you know it's good to eat healthy? When you sit down and you say, I'm going to eat healthy, what are you doing? Self-care. But which component of self-care? Physical. The second self-care is psychological. Psychological self-care is whereby you engage with the people, like you can go for counseling. Going for counseling, it will help you process some of the things you are going through. Some people, part of their psychological self-care is journaling. You just sit down and you journal your experiences. Another aspect of self-care is emotional self-care, whereby you get in touch with what you are feeling, and if doing a certain activity will give you the joy. Now this is why you have hobbies. What is this one thing you can do and it makes you feel good about yourself? What is this one thing you can do and it lifts your emotions? That is still part of self-care. There is another self-care, spiritual. Spiritual. Do you know it is good for us to practice forgiveness? Because at times forgiveness is what weighs us down. It is good for us to identify with a spiritual community. People you can interact with who are taking care of your spirituality, spiritual nature. Then we have another component is personal self-care. I mean, love your family, create time for your friends, go out and hang out with the people, have fun. That is personal. Professional, and that's why a majority of us fail. Putting boundaries. I'm going home. I leave my work in the office.
No emails after 6.
No emails after 6. And I'm going and I'm saying it's my time with my family. It's my time with my spouse. It's my time also. I'm not going to do anything to do with my work. Because the truth is this. If something happens to you in the name of work, you can always be replaced. You can always be replaced. But you cannot be replaced in your family. Right? So let us also take care of ourselves professionally. Create boundaries. Create those boundaries. Once you take care of yourself in the 6 dimensions, then I can tell you for a fact, you'll be taking care of your mental health. And before you realize it, your productivity will be high. You will not be erupting with emotions. You will live up to your potential, and you'll be able to make a contribution. You'll be able to go an extra mile wherever your abilities or your skills are needed.
Terry, you have me excited. I was busy ticking off boxes in my head of I do this, I do this. Clearly, professional self-care is something maybe we've never been aware of that we need to put consideration, spiritual. So thank you for that. Are there any final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience before we end our discussion?
Yes. Allow me to repeat this because it's important. There is no health without mental health. Number 2, mental health is beyond and does not mean is the absence of a mental disorder. The fact that you don't have depression, it does not mean you're mentally healthy. No, you could be having a mental health problem. So let us redefine mental health. Let the lay person understand what is mental health. And above everything else, let us engage in intentional self-care. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
The pleasure has all been ours. Thank you so much for joining us.
Karibu. Thank you.